The text appeared on Ethan Cole's phone at 11:43 p.m. A simple message, no name attached. We just need somewhere warm for the night. Please. At first he thought it was spam. A wrong number, maybe. But then came another. They're getting cold. I don't know where else to go. He should have ignored it. A billionaire CEO didn't answer stray midnight texts. Yet something about the words, raw, desperate, stopped him. And then, as his eyes focused on the image that followed, the world tilted. A grainy photo taken under a flickering streetlight. A woman huddled on a park bench with two sleeping children in her arms. Snow falling around them like ash. And the woman, she looked like Clara. Ethan froze. It had been 6 years since he'd last seen her. 6 years since she'd vanished without explanation, leaving behind only silence. Every rational thought told him it couldn't be her, but every instinct screamed that it was. He grabbed his coat and keys, heart pounding, and drove into the night. Boston in winter was a cruel place. The streets glittered with ice, the air sharp enough to cut. Ethan's car tore through the quiet avenues, his mind a blur of memory and disbelief. The woman in the picture couldn't be Clara Evans, the woman who once made him believe in forever before disappearing into nothing. And yet, the thought of her shivering somewhere out there, clutching two children in the cold, was unbearable. When he reached the park, the snow had thickened into a soft storm. The world was hushed, blanketed in white. He killed the engine and scanned the benches. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, a small shape under the lamplight. His breath caught. She was there, wrapped in a worn coat, her hair damp with snow. Two small children were pressed against her sides, their faces hidden beneath faded scarves. "Clara," he whispered before he could stop himself. Her head snapped up. For a second, her expression was pure disbelief. Then came recognition, followed by fear. "Ethan." The sound of his name on her lips hit him like a blow. He stepped closer, his voice rough. "What are you doing here?" She held the twins tighter. "You shouldn't be here." "That's what I should be saying." He crouched beside her, taking in the scene, the frost clinging to her lashes, the way she was trembling beneath her coat. "You're freezing. Come with me." She shook her head, her breath visible in the air. "We'll be fine. Someone's coming to help." Someone already did. When she didn't move, he knelt lower, meeting her eyes. They were the same soft hazel he remembered, though now shadowed with exhaustion. "You have two children with you. You're not staying out here." "They're fine," she insisted, her voice breaking. "Clara." His tone softened. "Please." Her resolve wavered. He saw it, the way her eyes darted to the twins, then back to him. Finally, she whispered, "Just for tonight." He nodded, helping her to her feet. One of the twins stirred, a little boy with tousled hair and a sleepy frown. "Mama!" "It's okay, Liam," she murmured, brushing snow from his cheek. "We're going somewhere warm." Ethan felt something twist inside him at the word mama. The boy's face was soft and round, but there was something familiar about the line of his jaw. The girl beside him stirred too, curling closer into Clara's coat. He pushed the thought away. Not now. He opened the car door, and she hesitated before climbing in. The twins bundled against her. The car heater hummed to life, filling the space with warmth. For a while, the only sound was the soft breathing of the children. Ethan gripped the wheel, glancing at her through the dim light. 6 years, he said quietly. "And this is how I find you?" She turned to the window, her voice flat. "You weren't supposed to find me." He swallowed hard. "Then tell me why. Why did you disappear?" Her eyes stayed on the falling snow. "Because I had to." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you tonight." The rest of the drive passed in silence. But even without words, the air between them felt alive, thick with everything unsaid. When they reached his penthouse, she froze at the entrance. The glass facade, the marble floors. It was another world from the one she'd just come from. "This isn't a good idea," she murmured. "It's the safest one you've got," he said, unlocking the door. Inside, the warmth and quiet hit her all at once. The twins blinked awake, their small voices filling the space. "Mommy, where are we?" the girl whispered. Somewhere safe, Clara said softly, kneeling beside them. Ethan stood behind her, watching. He didn't miss how naturally she soothed them, how the two children clung to her as though she were their entire universe. He wanted to ask, needed to ask, but something in her eyes stopped him. Not yet. He fetched blankets from the hall closet and handed them over. They can take my room. You can have the guest suite. She looked up, wary. You don't have to do this. He met her gaze, voice low. Yes, I do. For a long moment, neither moved. The twins settled onto the couch, their breaths deepening into sleep. Clara smoothed their hair, her hands trembling. Ethan watched her silently, the memories crowding in, the laughter, the nights they'd spent dreaming of a future that never came. He thought of the photo she'd sent, the cold, the desperation, and something inside him broke. Whatever happened 6 years ago, whatever secret she was hiding, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't letting her disappear again. The sun rose pale and cold over the city, its light creeping through the tall windows of Ethan's penthouse. The faint hum of traffic below broke the silence that had settled through the night. Clara stirred first. She blinked against the soft glow, momentarily disoriented before the memory of last night came rushing back. The park bench, the snow, and Ethan's eyes when he found her. She turned her head. The twins were still asleep on the couch, wrapped in plush blankets that seemed too fine to touch. They looked peaceful now, small faces relaxed, cheeks warm with color. For the first time in weeks, they weren't shivering. And yet Clara's chest ached. She rose quietly, her legs stiff from exhaustion. The kitchen gleamed on the other side of the room, foreign and immaculate, all marble and chrome. She moved toward it, trying to make sense of being here again, of being in his world, Ethan's world. When she'd last seen him, his life had already been paved in gold. Now it seemed gilded in something colder. The glass, the silence, the precision, none of it felt human. She found the kettle, filled it with water, and set it on the stove. She'd barely turned it on when she heard his voice behind her. You still take your coffee black? Clara froze. Slowly she turned. Ethan stood at the edge of the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, hair tousled from sleep. He looked both exactly the same and impossibly different, harder, sharper. The boy she loved was gone. The man before her carried too many ghosts. I don't drink coffee anymore, she said quietly. He nodded once, stepping closer. Tea then? Tea would be nice, she murmured, turning back to the kettle. For a moment the air was thick with silence. The hiss of boiling water was the only sound between them. Then Ethan spoke again, his voice low. You could have called me, Clara. Her hands tightened around the mug she was holding. You think I didn't want to? He moved closer, his tone cutting through the calm. You disappeared. 6 years. Not a word. She turned to face him, her eyes suddenly fierce. And what was I supposed to say, Ethan? That your family offered me money to vanish? That they threatened me if I didn't? His breath caught. What? Her voice shook. Your uncle came to me the week I found out I was pregnant. He said you were engaged, said you'd already moved on. He handed me a check and told me to disappear quietly, for everyone's sake. Ethan's face went pale. That's not true. I wanted to believe that, she said bitterly, but when I tried to call, your number was disconnected. I sent letters. They came back unopened. He stepped closer, his voice cracking. Clara, I never saw them. I swear to you, I didn't know. Her eyes glistened. It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. The hell it doesn't matter, he said sharply. You were carrying my children, and someone decided I didn't deserve to know? Her silence was confirmation enough. Ethan turned away, running a hand through his hair. His jaw was tight, his voice rough. He did this. Richard. Clara looked up. You think it was your uncle? I know it was. He's been manipulating my life since my father died. Ethan, she began, but he cut her off. No. His voice softened. You should have been safe with me. You and them. At that, both of them glanced toward the couch. The twins were stirring now, blinking in the morning light. Liam sat up first, rubbing his eyes. Mommy? Clara smiled and hurried over. Good morning, sweetheart. Ethan followed, kneeling beside her. The children looked at him curiously, unafraid but unsure. Hi, he said gently. I'm Ethan. Liam tilted his head. You're the man from last night. That's right, Ethan said, smiling faintly. Did you sleep okay? Emma nodded, still clutching her blanket. It's warm here. Clara glanced at Ethan, her heart twisting. He looked at the twins with a tenderness she hadn't expected, a mixture of awe and regret. For a moment, he didn't look like the billionaire CEO everyone feared. He looked like a father seeing his children for the first time. Would you like breakfast? He asked. The twins exchanged excited looks. Pancakes? Emma asked hopefully. Ethan chuckled. Pancakes it is. He rose and moved to the kitchen. Within minutes, the scent of butter and maple syrup filled the air. Clara stood back, watching him flip pancakes with surprising ease. It felt surreal, domestic even. The man who once closed billion-dollar deals was now humming softly while cooking for two 6-year-olds. When they sat down to eat, the twins devoured their plates, giggling through sticky smiles. For a moment, the penthouse didn't feel like a museum. It felt alive. Clara caught Ethan's gaze across the table. Something warm flickered between them, fleeting but real. After breakfast, the twins settled near the window to watch the snowfall. Clara leaned against the counter, her voice low. We'll leave after lunch. I don't want to cause trouble. Ethan turned to her. You're not leaving. Ethan, I'm not arguing, he said firmly. You and the twins are staying here until we figure this out. She frowned. There's nothing to figure out. There's everything to figure out, he said, stepping closer. Why Richard did what he did. Why he thought he could take my family from me. And why you thought you couldn't come back. Her voice broke. Because I didn't think you'd want us. He stared at her, stunned. Clara, I never stopped wanting you. The words hung between them, fragile and heavy. For the first time since that night in the park, she let herself look into his eyes. Really look, and saw the truth she'd buried long ago. The man she'd loved still lived there. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready to fight for what they lost. Ethan didn't go into the office that day. For the first time in years, he turned off his phone, canceled his meetings, and let the world wait. Instead, he sat at the breakfast table, watching the twins draw on a notepad with the intensity of little artists. Their laughter filled the penthouse like sunlight breaking through a storm. Clara stood nearby, tidying dishes, her movements quiet and deliberate. He hadn't felt this kind of stillness in a long time. It wasn't comfort exactly, more like fragile peace, the kind that could vanish if he spoke too loud. When Clara finally looked up, their eyes met. You don't have to stay home, Ethan. We'll be fine. He smiled faintly. You say that like I could actually focus on work after last night. Her expression softened, but she turned away. The company won't run itself. It did for 6 years without me knowing the truth, he said quietly. It can survive one more day. Clara hesitated, drying her hands. You're angry. I can see it in you. But whatever you're planning, please don't. I'm not angry, he said, though it was only half true. I'm just done letting other people write my story for me. Before she could respond, a soft cough interrupted them. Liam stood near the table, his small face pale. Mommy, my tummy hurts. Clara immediately crouched beside him, concern flashing across her face. Did you eat too fast? He shook his head, leaning into her. Emma looked up from her drawing. He's been coughing all night, she whispered. Ethan was on his feet in seconds. We'll take him to a doctor. Clara hesitated. We can't afford... He cut her off gently. You don't need to. I've got it. She opened her mouth to argue, then stopped when she saw his expression. Calm, steady, unyielding. She nodded. All right. The clinic was quiet that morning. The doctor, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, examined Liam carefully, listening to his chest. It's just a bad cold, she assured them. No pneumonia, no infection, but he's underweight. Has he been eating regularly? Clara flushed. We've had some difficult months. The doctor nodded, writing a prescription. He needs rest, proper meals, and warmth. He's lucky you brought him in. Ethan looked at Clara. Lucky we did. The doctor smiled at the twins. And this must be your husband? Clara froze, the air between them tightening. Ethan hesitated, then answered softly. Something like that. The doctor nodded approvingly. It's good he's involved. Most fathers aren't. Clara's throat tightened. She kept her eyes on the floor until the doctor left the room. When they stepped outside, the cold air bit at their faces. Ethan placed a gentle hand on Liam's shoulder, guiding him toward the car. The little boy's small fingers slipped easily into his own. That single touch hit harder than any boardroom victory ever had. Clara noticed. Her gaze lingered on their joined hands, something unreadable in her eyes. Back at the penthouse, the twins curled up on the couch with blankets and warm milk. Clara fussed over them, adjusting pillows, checking temperatures. Ethan watched quietly. "You've been doing this alone for 6 years?" he asked. She nodded, smoothing Liam's hair. There wasn't another choice. "Where did you go?" "Albany, then Syracuse. Wherever I could find work." He frowned. "And you never told me?" "I tried, Ethan," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I wrote letters. I called. I even went to your office once. They turned me away, said you were traveling overseas and didn't want to be disturbed." Ethan's jaw tightened. That was Richard. He controlled my schedule, my mail, everything. Clara sighed. "I stopped hoping after a while. I just focused on keeping them safe." He looked at the twins asleep now, their faces peaceful. "They're incredible, Clara." Her lips curved faintly. "They are stronger than I'll ever be." "Liam has your eyes," he said softly. She glanced at him, a sad smile flickering. "And Emma has your temper." Ethan laughed quietly. It was the first time she'd seen him laugh since that night. For a moment, the air between them warmed. Then his phone buzzed. He frowned, checking the screen. It was Marissa, his attorney and oldest friend. He answered quickly. "Marissa?" Her voice was urgent. "Ethan, what the hell is going on? Richard's office just called an emergency board meeting. He's furious. Something about your unauthorized interference." Ethan's expression hardened. "He's trying to cover his tracks. Do you want me to stall?" "No, let him talk. I'll be there tomorrow." "Ethan, if this gets out—" "It already has," he said flatly, ending the call. When he turned back, Clara was watching him warily. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to end this," he said quietly, "once and for all." "You don't owe me that," she said, her voice trembling. He looked at her, eyes burning with something fierce and resolute. "I owe it to them." For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, the city lights flickered against the snow. The twins' steady breathing filled the silence. Finally, Clara whispered, "If you go after him, he'll destroy you. He always wins." Ethan shook his head slowly. "Not this time." He walked to the window, staring out at the skyline. The reflection of Clara and the twins glowed behind him in the glass, his past and his future, side by side. He'd spent 6 years building an empire only to realize he'd lost the only thing that mattered. Now, standing in the cold light of truth, he made himself a promise. Richard Cole had taken enough from him, and Ethan Cole was done letting other people decide who he was allowed to love. Snow swept across the city that night, frosting. Something went wrong while generating the response. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help.openai.com. The boardroom smelled of expensive wood polish and fear. Ethan could feel both thick in the air as he walked in, shoulders squared, every eye turning toward him. His uncle, Richard Cole, sat at the head of the long mahogany table, a throne he'd occupied for too long. He looked calm, almost amused, but the glint in his eyes betrayed the panic beneath. "Well," Richard said smoothly, spreading his hands, "the prodigal nephew returns." Ethan didn't bother sitting. "We need to talk." The room shifted with tension. The executives exchanged wary glances. Marissa stood quietly by the door, a file tucked under her arm. Richard leaned back, a half-smile curling his lips. "You've been busy, canceling meetings, ignoring calls, playing the family man. I have to admit, Ethan, this latest scandal of yours has been entertaining." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You mean Clara?" "Ah, yes." Richard's voice turned mocking. "The woman who managed to reappear just in time to threaten the company's stability. How convenient." Ethan took a step closer. "You paid her to disappear, didn't you?" That got Richard's attention. The smile faded just enough. Ethan continued, his voice low but steady. 6 years ago, you found out she was pregnant, and you couldn't risk a public embarrassment for the Cole name. So you made sure she vanished. Richard's face hardened. You have no proof. Ethan turned to Marissa, who handed him the file. He tossed it onto the table. Bank statements. Transfers from one of your shell companies to a private account under her landlord's name. Enough money to buy silence and fear. The board members murmured among themselves. Richard's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Am I? Ethan snapped. Because I also have copies of the letters Clara sent. Letters that were intercepted by your office. You made sure I never saw them. The color drained from Richard's face. Ethan leaned in, his voice sharp as ice. You didn't just manipulate a business, Richard. You destroyed lives, my life, her life, and you robbed me of 6 years with my children. The word children hit the room like a thunderclap. Richard's composure cracked. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Ethan said, and so will the press if I walk out of here today. The old man rose slowly, his calm replaced with fury. You'd burn everything your father built? Over her? Ethan met his gaze without flinching. No, I'd burn everything you corrupted. For a long, taut moment, neither moved. The silence was suffocating. Then Richard sat back down, straightening his tie with shaking hands. You think you've won? He said coldly. This company isn't built on sentiment. It's built on survival. And you, Ethan, you're too emotional to survive. Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe, but at least I can sleep at night. He turned to leave, Marissa following at his side. As the door closed behind them, Richard's voice echoed after him. You're making a mistake, boy. You can't protect her from me. Ethan didn't look back. Watch me. Back at the penthouse, Clara paced the living room, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater. She'd tried to keep busy, but every tick of the clock made her stomach knot tighter. When the elevator chimed, she rushed to the door. Ethan stepped inside, his expression unreadable. What happened? She asked. He hesitated, loosening his tie. It's done. He knows I'm on to him. Clara's heart sank. Ethan, you shouldn't have confronted him. He'll retaliate. He already did, he said, tossing his phone on the counter. He called a press contact before I left. They're spinning stories about you, about us. Her face went pale. What kind of stories? That you blackmailed me, that you're after the company's money, that the twins aren't even mine. Clara staggered back as if struck. He wouldn't. He would, Ethan said grimly. And he did. Tears stung her eyes. He's going to destroy us. Ethan crossed the room and caught her by the shoulders. No, Clara. He's trying to. But not this time. She looked up at him, trembling. You don't understand. He's powerful, Ethan. He has connections. Money. People who'll believe him. He shook his head. Let them. I'm not hiding anymore. You shouldn't have to either. Her voice cracked. You're risking everything you've worked for. He smiled faintly. What good is everything if I lose what actually matters? For a moment, neither spoke. The city lights glittered through the glass behind them, reflecting off the tears in Clara's eyes. Ethan, she whispered, why are you doing this? He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Because I spent 6 years letting other people make choices for me. I'm done living like that. Clara's breath caught. She wanted to believe him, to believe that this time, things could be different, but fear still lingered in her chest. What if it's too late? She whispered. He shook his head softly. It's never too late to fight for your family. Something in his voice, steady, certain, broke through her walls. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. He pulled her gently into his arms. She hesitated only a second before melting into him. The weight of everything she'd carried slowly giving way to warmth. Outside, the city hummed, unaware of the battle that was about to unfold. Inside, Ethan Cole made a silent vow. Richard had taken his future once. He wouldn't take it again. The storm outside matched the chaos inside Ethan's mind. Rain streaked down the tall windows of the penthouse, a muted percussion to the storm brewing within him. Clara sat curled on the sofa, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, the steam rising between them like a fragile peace offering. Neither had spoken since the news broke. Richard's smear campaign had gone live. Every gossip outlet, every business blog, every tabloid had the same headline. CEO's secret scandal. Was Clara Evans paid to pretend? The twins were asleep in the next room. For now at least, they were shielded from the noise. Ethan stood by the window, staring at the city lights flickering through the storm. "He's faster than I thought," he said finally, his voice low. Clara's reply was soft but edged with pain. "He's ruthless. He always was." Ethan turned to her, guilt flickering across his face. "I should have seen it coming. I underestimated how far he'd go." Clara shook her head. "You couldn't have known. He's been controlling every move behind the scenes for years." He stepped closer, his expression darkening. "Then it's time I stopped letting him." She set her cup down, her fingers trembling. "Ethan, listen to me. This isn't just about you and him anymore. It's about your name, your company, everything you built." He gave a humorless laugh. "Everything I built was his to begin with. All the money, all the power. It's nothing if I can't use it to protect you." Clara's throat tightened. "You can't fight fire with fire." "No," he said quietly, his eyes hardening, "but you can burn the rot out of the walls." The next morning, Ethan's office was chaos. Marissa was already there when he arrived, her phone buzzing nonstop. "Good, you're here," she said, thrusting a tablet toward him. "We've got a problem. The media's eating this up, and Richard's playing the victim. He's calling you an unstable liability and hinting that you'll be forced to resign." Ethan scanned the headlines. "Ethan Cole unfit to lead. Family feud in the boardroom." It was brutal, and it was working. "What about the board?" he asked. "They're nervous," Marissa admitted. "Half of them want to distance themselves from you. The other half think Richard's bluffing." Ethan set the tablet down with a controlled calm that Marissa recognized as dangerous. "Then we give them proof." Marissa frowned. "Proof of what?" "That Richard's the one who's unfit to lead." "You have evidence of the bribes," she said carefully. "But if you take this public, you'll drag the company through a scandal big enough to tank it." Ethan looked at her steadily. "If the price of the truth is the company, then it's a fair trade." Marissa sighed. "You're just like your father." He gave her a faint smile. "That's the first compliment you've given me in years." She rolled her eyes, but her tone softened. "I'll start drafting a statement. But Ethan, this isn't just business anymore. It's war." "I know," he said, heading for the door, "and I've already chosen my side." Back at the penthouse, Clara sat on the floor with Emma and Liam, helping them build a fort out of couch cushions. For a brief moment, laughter filled the room. It was a fragile illusion of normalcy, one she desperately wanted to believe in. The door opened, and Ethan stepped inside, soaked from the rain. The twins ran to him, their excitement cutting through the heaviness that clung to the room. "Daddy!" Emma cried. The word froze him. He looked down at her, startled. Clara's eyes went wide, her lips parting in shock. Emma frowned. "Mommy said you used to know each other. You know us too now, right?" Ethan knelt slowly, his throat tight. "Yeah," he said softly. "I know you now." Liam giggled. "Then you're our daddy." Clara's breath caught, tears filling her eyes. Ethan looked at her, searching her face. She didn't correct them. For once, the silence between them wasn't about fear or regret. It was something else, something fragile and sacred. Ethan smiled faintly and hugged them both. "I guess I am." Later, when the twins had gone to bed, Clara found him on the balcony, staring out into the rain again. "You shouldn't let them call you that," she said softly. He didn't turn around. "Why not? It's true." She stepped closer. "Ethan, please. They've already been through enough. If this ends badly—" He turned to face her, his expression firm. "Then I'll make sure they never feel it. I promise you that." Clara studied him for a long moment. "You can't fix everything." "Maybe not," he said, "but I can damn well try." A flash of lightning illuminated the skyline behind him. For a moment, Clara saw him not as the man she left behind, but as the one who refused to give up now. Something inside her cracked. "You're going to lose everything, Ethan." He stepped closer, his voice quiet but resolute. "If it means keeping you safe, then it's worth it." The storm roared around them, but neither moved. Inside, the television flickered with breaking news. Richard Cole under federal scrutiny for financial misconduct. Marissa's work had already begun. Ethan exhaled slowly. It's starting. Clara looked up at him, fear and hope colliding in her eyes. And if it doesn't end the way you want? He reached for her hand, his fingers steady against hers. Then we build something new. Thunder rolled over the city, and the first faint streaks of dawn began to pierce the clouds. For the first time in years, the light didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a promise. Ethan stood before the mirror that morning, adjusting his tie with mechanical precision. His reflection looked composed, but his pulse betrayed him. Steady hands, storming heart. Today wasn't just another day at the company. It was the day he'd face Richard publicly. The past week had been a blur. Attorneys, press briefings, leaked evidence. Marissa had worked around the clock, pulling together every document, every wire transfer, every silenced name. Now the truth was no longer rumor. It was fact. When Clara appeared in the doorway, her reflection joined his in the glass. She looked pale but composed, her eyes soft with worry. Are you sure about this? He met her gaze in the mirror. If I don't do this now, it never ends. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. He's not just going to give up. You're threatening his legacy, Ethan. He turned to her fully, his expression steady. Then I'll build a new one that doesn't come with blood on it. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she reached out, straightening his tie. You sound like the man I fell in love with. His breath caught, but he didn't speak. There wasn't time for words like that. Not yet. He gave her hand a squeeze. Stay with the twins. Don't go anywhere near the building. Her voice cracked. Please, just come back. I will, he promised. I always do. The boardroom was packed. Cameras, lawyers, executives, and silence heavy enough to suffocate. Richard sat at the far end of the table, his expression carved in stone. When Ethan entered, all heads turned. The chatter ceased. The air changed. Mr. Cole, one board member said, these proceedings are being recorded. You understand the consequences of your accusations? Ethan nodded. Perfectly. Richard leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk curling his lips. I hope you do, because after today, the only name left on this company's door will be mine. Ethan placed a stack of documents on the table, the sound sharp as a gunshot. Not if the truth comes first. He gestured to Marissa, who connected her laptop to the projector. A series of documents filled the screen. Emails, payment records, shell company transactions. Each one tied to Richard Cole. Each one damning. Gasps rippled around the table. 6 years ago, Ethan began, his voice clear and deliberate. Richard Cole authorized illegal payments to silence individuals he considered a threat to the company's image. One of them was Clara Evans, my partner at the time. She was paid to disappear after my uncle discovered she was pregnant. He then intercepted her attempts to contact me, forged company documents, and used shareholder influence to bury the evidence. Richard's smirk didn't falter, but his eyes flickered with unease. You think you can prove this fantasy? Ethan clicked the remote. A new image appeared, a bank ledger signed in Richard's own hand. I don't think, Ethan said softly. I know, Marissa added. The Department of Justice has already opened a preliminary inquiry. This is no longer an internal matter. The room erupted in whispers. Richard slammed a fist on the table. This is slander. No, Ethan said, his voice rising. This is justice. He stepped closer, meeting Richard's gaze. You stole my family. You destroyed lives for profit. And you've been hiding behind the company's name long enough. Richard rose, shaking with rage. You think this makes you a hero? You're throwing away everything your father built. Ethan's tone turned cold. My father built something worth believing in. You turned it into something worth burning down. Security entered the room as Richard's shouting grew incoherent. The board members whispered urgently among themselves, several already gathering their belongings. Marissa leaned toward Ethan. It's over. The board's voting to suspend him pending investigation. Ethan didn't smile. He only nodded. Good. As he turned to leave, Richard's voice cut through the chaos. You think you've won, boy? You've ruined the family name. Ethan paused at the door. No, I've reclaimed it. That evening, the penthouse was quiet except for the hum of the city below. Clara stood by the window when Ethan returned, the lights of Boston reflecting in her eyes. He looked exhausted, but lighter, like the weight he'd carried for years had finally lifted. She met him halfway across the room. "Is it done?" He nodded slowly. "Richard's suspended. The DOJ is taking over from here. It'll be public by morning." Her breath trembled. "You did it." He shrugged faintly. "We did it." She smiled, tears welling. "You stood up to him. You finally fought back." He looked at her, the fire in his eyes softening. "I didn't just fight for me, Clara. I fought for you. For them." At that, her composure broke. She stepped into his arms, bearing her face against his chest. "I thought I'd lost you forever," she whispered. He held her tightly, his voice low. "You almost did, but I'm done losing." They stood there for a long moment, just breathing, the storm that had ruled their lives finally beginning to fade. Then Ethan pulled back slightly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "We're not done yet. The press will be vicious. The company needs restructuring, but this time we'll do it right." "We?" she asked softly. He smiled. "If you'll stay." Clara looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I've been running for too long. Maybe it's time I stopped." Ethan kissed her forehead. "Then stay. We'll rebuild everything. Together." Outside, the rain had stopped. The city glittered, washed clean, as if the world itself had decided to start over with them. For the first time in 6 years, Ethan felt like he could breathe. The war was ending, and something new was finally beginning. Morning sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, soft and gold, catching the edges of the room like hope creeping back into a long, dark space. For the first time in weeks, Clara woke to quiet. Not the echo of fear, not the buzz of news alerts, but the sound of the twins' laughter from the kitchen. She sat up slowly, blinking against the light. The smell of pancakes drifted through the air again, mingling with the faint hiss of a coffee machine. For a fleeting second, she could almost believe this was a normal family morning. When she stepped out of the bedroom, Ethan was already there, sleeves rolled, hair mussed, a smear of flour on his wrist. Emma sat at the counter, humming a tune as she stacked strawberries on her pancakes. Liam was trying and failing to flip one of his own on a child-sized pan. "Careful," Ethan warned with a grin. "You're about to invent flying breakfast." The pancake flipped, landed half on the stove, half on the floor. The twins burst into giggles. Clara leaned against the doorway, smiling. "I see culinary genius runs in the family." Ethan turned, startled, then softened. "Morning. There's coffee waiting for you." "Thank you," she said, her voice still fragile from sleep. She took the mug, her hands curling around its warmth, and just stood there for a moment, watching them. Ethan with his easy patience, the twins glowing with laughter. It felt like something she'd only ever dreamed about. But reality was never far behind. Her phone, left on the counter, vibrated with another alert. The headline glared up at her. "Billionaire family feud explodes. Richard Cole's downfall. Ethan Cole's redemption." She sighed. The media storm hadn't calmed. It had only shifted, Ethan noticed. "Don't read that. I have to know what they're saying." "They're saying whatever sells," he replied, wiping his hands on a towel. "None of it matters anymore." She met his gaze. "It does matter, Ethan. To your investors, your company, your future." He leaned against the counter. "I'll rebuild what's worth keeping. The rest can burn." Her eyes softened. "You mean that, don't you?" He nodded. "For years, I thought success meant control. Turns out it means letting go." Later that afternoon, they drove to the park, the same park where everything had started. The twins ran ahead, laughing as they chased pigeons and kicked up fallen leaves. Clara walked beside Ethan down the quiet path, hands tucked into her coat pockets. "You really shouldn't be out here," she said quietly. "The cameras could find us." He shrugged. "Let them. Maybe it's time people saw what's real." She looked up at him, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "The billionaire and the woman he lost?" "The man who finally found what matters," he corrected. They stopped near the old bench, the one where Clara had sat that freezing night with her children, begging the universe for shelter. The sight of it brought back a flood of memories she'd tried hard to bury. "I used to hate this place," she whispered. "I thought it was where everything ended." Ethan's expression softened. It's where it began again. Clara turned toward him, eyes glassy with emotion. I don't know how to do this. How to just start over. After everything. He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but sure. One day at a time. She shook her head. You make it sound easy. It's not, he said quietly, but neither is walking away again. They stood there for a long while watching the twins play. The late afternoon light painted everything gold and forgiving. I have something for you, Ethan said finally. He pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket and handed it to her. Inside were papers, official, neatly folded. What is this? She asked. Property transfer, he said. A new house. In your name. No conditions, no contracts. Somewhere safe. For you and the twins. Her eyes widened. Ethan, I can't. You can, he interrupted softly. You spent 6 years surviving alone. You shouldn't have to wonder where home is anymore. She looked at the papers, her lips trembling. Why are you doing this for me? He smiled faintly. Because it's what I should have done 6 years ago. Tears welled in her eyes. She didn't trust her voice, so she just stepped forward and hugged him. At first it was cautious, a thank you more than anything else. But then she felt his arms wrap around her, strong and sure, grounding her in a way that words never could. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, You're not the same man I left. I had to lose everything to find out who I was, he said. You taught me that. That night, as the city lights blinked beyond the penthouse glass, Ethan watched the twins asleep in their beds. Emma's hand rested over her brother's, both of them safe, dreaming. Clara stood beside him, whispering, They look at peace. He nodded. They are, because you fought for them. She turned toward him. We both did. He hesitated, his voice low. I don't know what happens next. The company will change hands, the press will keep digging, but none of it scares me anymore. Clara studied him, then said softly, What does? Losing you again. The words hung between them, fragile as glass. She stepped closer until their foreheads touched. Then don't. For the first time since their world had shattered, they weren't two broken people fighting against the past. They were something new, something rebuilt, scarred but whole. Outside, the rain began again, soft and cleansing. Ethan took her hand and whispered, This time we write the ending ourselves. The following day dawned clear, though the calm that had settled over the city was deceptive. For Ethan and Clara, peace remained an illusion, a fragile pause before the next storm. News outlets were ablaze with headlines. Richard Cole had been formally indicted on multiple charges of fraud and obstruction of justice. The empire he had built over decades was unraveling, brick by brick, under the weight of his own corruption. But with victory came exposure. Every camera lens, every journalist, every curious onlooker now pointed at the Cole family. Photos of Ethan and Clara walking through the park had already spread across social media, labeled as the reunited billionaire and his hidden family. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the endless comments, her stomach twisting. She was after his money all along. Those kids don't even look like him. Sympathy story for PR. She turned the phone off, her fingers trembling. When Ethan stepped out of the adjoining room, adjusting his cufflinks, she forced a smile. You're trending, she said, her voice too light to be genuine. He grimaced. So I've been told. It's not just about you, she whispered. They're talking about the twins, about me. He sat beside her, his hand finding hers. I know, and I'll fix it. You can't fix people, Ethan. You can't make them believe what they don't want to. He looked at her, something raw in his eyes. Then I'll make them see the truth. That afternoon, Ethan called a press conference, not from a sleek hotel ballroom or his corporate office, but from the orphanage Clara had volunteered at years before, where she'd once spent Christmas handing out coats and food to children in need. Cameras lined the modest hall, reporters jostled for position, lights flaring like heat. Clara stood off to the side, the twins sitting quietly beside her, sketching on paper with colored pencils as the noise swelled. When Ethan stepped to the podium, the room stilled. I've been called many things this week, he began, his tone calm but resolute. Some true, some not. But the one thing I refuse to be called anymore is silent. He paused, scanning the crowd. For 6 years, the truth about my family was buried under lies. Lies created by greed, fear, and control. The woman you've read about in your headlines, Clara Evans, is not a con artist, not a scandal, not a PR stunt. She's the woman I should have never lost. And those two children, he gestured toward the twins, are mine. Not by claim, but by blood, by choice, by love. The murmurs were immediate, but Ethan pressed on. My uncle believed power meant erasing people, silencing them. Today, I'm choosing the opposite. The truth will stand, even if it costs me every dollar I've ever earned. Someone shouted from the crowd, "Are you resigning from coal industries?" Ethan met their gaze without flinching. No, I'm rebuilding it. From the ground up. Transparency, accountability, compassion. Values my father built this company on before it was corrupted. I'll return every cent stolen under Richard's regime to the people it belongs to, and I'll dedicate the company's next chapter to helping families like the one I almost lost. The hall erupted in questions, flashes, chaos, but Clara could see something shift in the air. The energy wasn't hostile anymore. It was stunned. Listening. Ethan finished with quiet conviction. You can write whatever you want about me, but write this too. I'm done hiding. From now on, this family is my truth. He stepped back, the applause hesitant at first, then swelling, genuine. Clara felt her throat tighten. The twins looked up from their drawings wide-eyed. Emma whispered, Mommy, did Daddy just tell everyone we're his? Clara smiled, tears blurring her vision. Yes, sweetheart, he did. That evening, the four of them walked through the city hand in hand. People recognized them, yes, but this time, the stares felt different, kinder. They stopped near the bridge where the skyline shimmered over the river. Ethan crouched beside the twins as they tossed pebbles into the water. See that? He said softly. Every ripple starts small, but it spreads. That's how change works. Clara watched him, her heart full and trembling all at once. You really did it, she murmured. He rose, brushing his hands. Not yet, but I will. She smiled faintly. You sound like the man I met all those years ago, except older, wiser, he chuckled, and far more terrified of two tiny critics at home. She laughed, the sound light and free. Then her voice softened. They're lucky, you know, to have a father like you. He looked at her for a long moment. No, Clara, I'm the lucky one. The wind off the river brushed past them, carrying away the last traces of winter. Ethan slipped his arm around her, pulling her close as the twins leaned over the railing, giggling. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the weight of loss pressing on him. The city lights reflected off the water, and for once, he didn't see his reflection alone. He saw a family, real, fragile, and his. The weeks that followed unfolded like a quiet sunrise after a storm. Slow, uncertain, but warm in a way Ethan hadn't felt in years. The chaos that once defined his days, the cameras, the boardrooms, the endless noise, had softened into something new, something peaceful. Coal industries had survived, though it looked nothing like the empire it once was. Ethan had stepped down from the CEO position voluntarily, leaving the company in Marissa's capable hands. Together, they'd restructured it into a foundation-driven model, one that prioritized rebuilding communities, not swallowing them. But the greatest rebuilding was happening at home. Clara stood on the porch of their new house one chilly morning, watching the twins chase each other across the yard, their laughter carrying through the crisp air. The garden was still bare from winter, but the house itself, warm light spilling through its windows, felt alive. It wasn't grand like Ethan's penthouse, or cold like his old offices. It was theirs. Ethan stepped outside, 2 mugs of tea in hand. They've been out there since sunrise, he said, smiling. Clara took the mug, her fingers brushing his. They said they're practicing for spring. He chuckled, wrapping an arm around her. Then they're definitely my kids, already impatient for the next season. For a while, they just stood there, the quiet wrapping around them like a shared heartbeat. The city's noise was distant here, replaced by the rustle of trees and the faint hum of life returning. Clara finally spoke, her voice soft. I still wake up some nights thinking it was all a dream, that you'll be gone, the way you were before. Ethan turned to her, his expression tender. I used to think that too, that happiness was something temporary, something I could lose if I blinked too long. He smiled faintly. But maybe happiness isn't something you keep. Maybe it's something you choose every day. Clara looked up at him, her eyes glistening. And you're choosing it now? He leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. Every single day. Later that afternoon, they visited the park again, the one where everything had begun. The snow was gone now, replaced by the first shy touches of spring. Ethan walked with one hand in his pocket, the other holding Emma's. Clara followed close behind with Liam perched on her hip, giggling as he pointed at ducks drifting across the pond. When they reached the old bench, Ethan stopped. The same bench where he'd found her and the twins that freezing night months ago. The same place where his world had cracked open and started again. Clara followed his gaze and smiled softly. I still remember what I was thinking that night. He glanced at her. What was that? That I'd run out of miracles. He squeezed her hand. Maybe you just hadn't met one yet. She laughed quietly, shaking her head. You're still terrible at humility. And you still pretend you don't like it. She shot him a mock glare, then smiled, her voice softening. I like this better. You, me, them. No lies, no pretending. Ethan looked at the twins chasing each other near the fountain, sunlight glinting off their hair. They'll never have to wonder if they're loved, he said quietly. Not ever. Clara slipped her hand into his. That's the only thing that ever mattered. As the sun began to set, the four of them sat together on the bench, wrapped in a silence that felt full, not empty. Emma leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder, and Liam dozed off in Clara's lap. Ethan looked out at the fading sky. You know, he murmured, my father once told me that real success isn't measured by money or power. It's measured by what you can still hold when everything else is gone. Clara smiled. Then you're rich beyond measure. He turned to her, his eyes soft and sure. We both are. For a moment, everything felt perfectly still, the world reduced to laughter, warmth, and the rhythm of breathing in sync. The pain, the years apart, the shadows of betrayal. They were still part of them, but no longer defined them. They had built something new from the ruins, something honest. The twins stirred and Clara whispered, It's getting late. We should go. Ethan nodded, standing and lifting Liam into his arms. Emma reached for his other hand, her small fingers fitting perfectly into his. They walked together toward the fading light, the park behind them bathed in gold. As they reached the gate, Clara turned back for one last glance at the bench. The place that had once been a symbol of despair, now a monument to everything they had overcome. She smiled. This time the cold didn't hurt. This time the night didn't feel lonely. This time love had found them and stayed.